Has Donald Trump lost his mind? His former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, seems to think so, writing in the Sunday Telegraph, this is the craziest thing he's done yet, and that's saying something.
Well, I don't think he's lost his mind, but I do think that the American administration and President Trump are right to be very concerned about security in the Arctic region, and that is what lies behind his concern about the situation in Greenland. For our part, as a government, we've been absolutely crystal clear that the future of Greenland is a matter for people in Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark to determine, and not anybody else. And it is not in our collective interest for NATO allies to be divided on this issue or on the question of tariffs. We think the tariffs are unhelpful and they're wrong, and we need to be working together in order to secure the Arctic region to make sure that we're safe in the United Kingdom and the people of America are safe as well.
They sold the public a promise of reform, yet now the foundations of justice itself are being quietly questioned, with jury trials suddenly on the chopping block. Lisa Nandy has cracked open the door to a legal system many never voted for, while at the same time millions of citizens are being told they will not have a voice at the ballot box this May. Is this simple mismanagement or a deliberate consolidation of power? What she revealed while the cameras were still rolling raises serious alarms. This is a government spiraling into chaos, linked to the transfer of strategic assets, talk of removing jury trials, and the effective sidelining of 4 million voters in local elections. In this breakdown, we examine Lisa Nandy's disastrous interview as she struggles to justify the unjustifiable, a cabinet tearing itself apart, a prime minister facing historic unpopularity, and an agenda that appears increasingly disconnected from the people it claims to serve.
Hasn't the Prime Minister and indeed the Labour government slightly undermined their own argument when it comes to the self-determination of Greenlanders and indeed the Danes because you gave away the Chagos Islands? I mean, you didn't make that argument for Chagossians, so why should anyone believe it when the Prime Minister claims he wants to protect Greenlanders?
Well, what we did in the Chagos Islands was actually, in fairness, a continuation of what the previous Conservative government had been trying to do but not been able to manage with the Americans, which was to make sure that we cut a deal that enabled us to secure the future of the Chagos Islands as a strategic base and to ensure that our security is protected. That, in the end, is what lies behind all of the decisions that we make as a government, is what is in the interests of the British people. We don't think it's for a moment in the interests of the British people.
Lisa Nandy is playing a reckless game by taking aim at Donald Trump, mocking his concerns over Greenland while conveniently ignoring the blatant contradiction of Keir Starmer handing over the Chagos Islands. She insists surrendering British territory was somehow in the national interest, but how does giving up strategic assets to a China-lined Mauritius serve the British people? This government lectures Trump on security threats, while actively weakening its own strategic position at home. They brand Trump as unhinged, yet their own decisions defy logic and common sense. If they can so casually give away Chagos, the real question is this: which piece of British territory will be next on the chopping block?
All I would say to Carl and to others, and I've known Carl a long time and like him enormously, is that nobody else has put forward proposals about how you reform what is a broken justice system. You've got women who are awaiting the trial of perpetrators on rape charges, who are waiting for years and years. And essentially what that is doing is timing out the system so that the perpetrator knows they only have to wait it out. And victims will just give up because it's too hard and takes too long to get justice. That's the situation that people like Robert Jenrick left us with. And what we're trying to do is speed that up, never at the expense of proper justice, never at the expense of making sure we get the right outcome. But at the moment, justice delayed is justice denied for too many people. And we're not prepared to allow that to stand. If Carl Turner or others want to talk about alternatives to fixing our broken criminal justice system, we will listen. We're prepared to hear them, but so far not a single person across the political system has been prepared to grip this, and we are.
This is deeply alarming. When challenged on the idea of scrapping jury trials, Nandy didn't shut it down. She deflected, saying no formal proposals have been made, which sounds like an open invitation to dismantle centuries of British justice. She shields herself behind the tragic delays in serious cases, using victims' suffering as cover to argue for removing fundamental protections. She repeats that delayed justice is denied, but ignores the bigger truth: justice without a jury of your peers is justice hollowed out. This government blames a broken system to mask its own authoritarian instincts, because once juries are targeted, the safeguard between the citizen and the state starts to disappear. And when the state decides you're guilty, who is left to defend you?
That this government has been characterised by U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. I mean, Wes Streeting, who apparently is planning, not plotting, a leadership bid in the future against Keir Starmer, has said the policy should be get it right first time. You haven't got anything right first time.
Well, I don't accept that at all. I mean, if you look at the work that we're doing, not just in Wes's area on bringing down waiting lists, but on planning reform to get the houses built this country needs, in terms of setting up Great British Energy and bringing down people's energy bills. If you look at the work that we're rolling out around the country right now, we've been able to make sure that by making tough decisions, we're able to ensure that young people in every part of the country are going to be able to have access to youth clubs and youth workers, arts, culture, music, sport, dance, drama, all the things that working class kids used to have access to, but over the recent decades they can only now access if their parents can pay. Because we're working together, because we're getting it right, we're being able to make sure that those things happen and that people's lives get better. Do I think this has fixed the problem? No, I don't. Is there a lot more to do? Yes, there is. But I don't accept the idea that we can't get it right first time. Most of the time we are getting it right first time, and where we're not, it's because we're listening to people hitting the alarm bell, saying there are valid concerns about the way in which we're going about achieving our objectives. We listen and we change course. I think that's just being responsible and listening to
13 U-turns in under 2 years, and Lisa Nandy has the nerve to call that listening. No, that's not responsiveness, that's sheer incompetence. She insists they're getting it right most of the time, yet her own colleagues, including Wes Streeting, are quietly admitting the policy should be to get it right the first time. That's not confidence, that's panic. This government reverses course faster than it can explain itself, driven by headlines and damage control rather than principle or direction. When every decision is a flip-flop and every stance is temporary, it begs a serious question. If they don't know where they stand, how can they possibly know where they're taking the country? And are we being driven straight toward the edge?
13 U-turns since Labour took power. But just on that line you just said about we're working together, is that credible then when yet again in the Sunday newspapers we've got reports of Wes Streeting briefing against Keir Starmer? Apparently there was this piece in the news statement saying that he was approached by Morgan McSweeney, asked if he was plotting. No, I'm not plotting, I'm planning, as any ambitious minister would. Then we've got talk of Andy Burnham wanting to come up with a dream ticket of him as Prime Minister, Ed Miliband as Chancellor. I mean, dream ticket, that might be some people's idea of a nightmare. So you're not a nest of singing birds, are you? You're a little nest of vipers, all vying. People are all vying to be Prime Minister because Keir Starmer's not doing very well and he's the least popular Prime Minister now in history.
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, you wouldn't expect me to agree with that, but I won't lie to you. It is deeply, deeply frustrating. I opened the papers on, well, you don't open the papers anymore, do you? But I clicked on the app on there.
Nandy practically admits it herself, confessing that reading the headlines leaves her with a sense of dread, and it's not hard to see why. Keir Starmer's cabinet has become a pit of internal rivalry. Reports swirl of Wes Streeting positioning himself for a power move while Andy Burnham eyes a future takeover, even as Nandy insists everything is harmonious. But her words don't match the reality, and the tension is written all over their faces. They know Starmer is sinking to historic polling lows, and panic is setting in. This isn't a united government focused on fixing the country, it's a leadership consumed by infighting, with factions scrambling for control as the ship takes on water. And if they can't even trust each other, why should the public trust them with the nation's future?
You talk about people having a front row seat for 15 years of Tory disaster, and yet you're denying 4 million of those people a vote in the local elections in May. Why are you doing that? If you look at the electoral maths, it's because, isn't it, Lisa Nandy, Labour faces losing the seats that it's postponed the elections in to reform. So you've done this because you're running scared.
No, what we're doing is reorganising local government. And the reason that we're doing it is because a lot of people in the country right now have a really confusing two-tier system of councils. And we think that that's bad for the country. It means that it's not clear who's responsible for what. I mean, many people just wouldn't know who to go to when there was a problem. It means there's often a disagreement about how to sort out problems.
This is the clearest sign yet of election manipulation. Lisa Nandy attempts to dress up the cancellation of local elections as harmless local government reorganization, but the reality is far uglier. 4 million people are being denied their vote because this government fears losing ground to Reform UK. They know public anger is boiling over, so instead of facing voters, they remove the chance to vote altogether. She complains about cost, as if democracy suddenly has a price tag. Since when did financial convenience outweigh the public's right to choose? This isn't reform, it's self-preservation, an intentional move to protect power by muting the public. And if they can erase an election in May, the question no one can ignore is what stops them from doing it again.
Is that right? Is that right that he should be allowed to retire with no disciplinary action taken against him at all for what was a completely and utterly bungled ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans at that Aston Villa match?
Well, I'll make no comment about his pension because I'm not across the details of precisely what his pension arrangements are, and I do think in general our police work extremely hard and deserve to retire properly. But on the question of accountability, no, I think this is really, really horrendous, actually. What you've had over the last few months is a situation unfolding where we now know that West Midlands Police made the decision to recommend that we ban away fans from a football match on the basis that they wouldn't be safe because of who they were, because they were Israeli, but in the most part, actually, the fans attending that match weren't going to be Israeli, they were going to be Jewish, and many of them travelling from other parts of the UK, particularly London, to attend the game. Now, I first saw this just after Aston Villa announced that was the decision. We took a view as a government that was completely and utterly unacceptable. And I have watched with real dismay as the West Midlands Police have sought to justify that decision based on what we now know, thanks to the independent review, is information that was completely inaccurate. That is just not acceptable. It's had a chilling effect not just on the Jewish community, but on anybody in this country who believes in the highest standards of policing. I think it's absolutely right that the Chief Constable has gone.
In the end, Nandy lets the truth slip on two-tier policing, as West Midlands Police barred Jewish supporters using faulty information, amounting to profiling dressed up as public safety. She labels it appalling, yet the Chief Constable exits untouched, collecting a full pension with no accountability and no repercussions, rewarded with public money after a serious failure. Nandy claims to be concerned, but concern costs nothing, and words don't equal justice. Why is incompetence protected instead of punished, and is this really the standard they celebrate? She tries to maintain composure, but the fractures are impossible to hide. From yielding to foreign interests and undermining juries, to cancelling elections to cling to power, this Labour government is running out of credibility and time. They call themselves harmonious voices, but what we're hearing sounds more like a final requiem for British democracy. Starmer looks weak, the cabinet is manoeuvring behind closed doors, and voters are being shut out. The only real question is how much more damage will be done before the public draws a line, because the next sudden reversal may not be about policy, but about your freedoms. Stay alert, stay engaged, and don't let the truth be buried, as this story is only beginning.